Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone is having a good Monday.
Hi, everyone.
We have a little presentation is too strong of a word. It's sort of a outline of sorts that we'll use just to make sure we sort of stay on task. But thank you for everyone that's present. And yeah, we'll go through some quick intros. But so my name's Danny. I work here at RevBoss. I'm joined by Kelly Sells. We'll kind of let her do her intro here in a second. But it was kind of a funny story of maybe how this idea came about. Kelly and I first met, it's been a little while now, earlier this year. And Space Junk's been a client of RevBoss for a little while. And we had the chance to learn from Kelly about their experience with RevBoss. And out of that conversation came, um, for me personally, a lot of learnings about uh, running a sales motion, running BD at a agency, services business, studio, which, make up a lot of our client base here at RevBoss. So it felt a little selfish of me to keep that information to myself. And I said, hey, Kelly, would you be interested in maybe sharing some of your learnings, having been in this profession for as long as you have, with our community of clients and our community of founder led companies who are in the B2B services agency sort of studio space. So I want to just say thank you for that. And right before we jumped onto this, we were doing a little bit of prep, and just something I felt was worth sharing and that I think will be sort of the tone of this conversation is, yeah, things have been hard. 2024, for RevBoss and for a lot of our clients have not been easy for a variety of reasons, but I think and we want this to be sort of a proposal or an element of hope, not, just hope that we magically make things better, without doing work, but that there's signs and efforts and progress in strategy and planning. And I think, sharing some of those tips when it comes to running a sales motion, how to get the most revenue out of the opportunities that we get is, what we're trying to provide here today. And Kelly, thanks so much for being sort of that, yeah, that hope. And I hope that this conversation is as authentic in that as possible. So thank you, Kelly. If you want to give your quick little intro, that would be great.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome and thanks for having me. I'm Kelly Sells. I'm Director of Business Development for Space Junk. Space Junk is a full service live action and animation content creation studio. We are in Columbus, Ohio. Our clients are all over the United States. We've always been in Columbus. This is our home, but we do work everywhere. So our animation services include 2D, 3D, and visual effects, and we handle everything from pre-production through production through post-production. So that's who we are. Yeah, that's who I am, and that's who we are.
Awesome. So let's kind of just jump into it. So before we start, and this is going to cover, I don't know, like sales 101, but just kind of how sales looks and how to be successful in sales today, end of 2024, going into 2025, because a lot has changed. So maybe just to start, and you alluded to kind of how the world was coming out of, the pandemic and how it's sort of shaping up to be now headed into 2025. But yeah, what are some observations, high levelly around the sales motion, the sales process, both challenges and opportunities in kind of the studio agency B2B services space?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, which is how we categorize everything now. But I will say that everything I'm doing now, everything that we do at Space Junk, I'm the face of the studio, myself and my partner Mel, but we are only as good as the last project that we did, and we are as successful as we are because of our team. So first and foremost, I am the face of the studio for sales, but I'm nothing without this team behind me. So taking that attitude out when talking to people is critical. So your culture and the people you have representing your business is the most important thing. They have to be passionate about what you're offering, whether it's a service or a product or whatever. I'm not doing really anything different now than we did pre-pandemic, but the hope is coming back because it was so difficult not being able to be face to face, not being able to drop off cookies or bring in a lunch and learn or, go see our clients in person. We would travel all year round. It's important for us to be in front of our clients. It was very hopeless there for a while. Not being able to do that didn't mean that we weren't being successful. It was just harder. But I am seeing now in the last 3 months a light at the end of that tunnel. So what we were talking about a little off topic when Danny and I just finished talking for our prep was that we're starting to see a lot of hope. We're starting to see people in person again. We're traveling again and we're networking again, but we're applying our sales process that we apply to everything that we do to our networking and to our sales meetings that we're having in person. So, it just takes a little bit more imagination to try and lay that across all the channels that you're using for business development. So I don't know. We can get into that later if anybody has any questions, or they're welcome to contact me to talk more about that. But, I told Danny I'm very hopeful and I wanted to relay that things are getting better out there, in our opinion.
Yeah, and I made the joke, but hope it doesn't just come out of thin air. I think there's a lot
It
of work
doesn't.
that's involved. And one thing that we hear from our clients and even for ourselves is, the even for like Redboss, for example, our market has always been competitive. It's getting even more competitive. New technology is getting introduced that makes what we do that much more difficult to differentiate. And I think one element that's really important in lieu of this is preparation and preparing your sales strategy, your sales process. So maybe just, starting there, like what are some things, whether it's Space Junk or from your experience, some do's and don'ts in terms of preparation of, of going out and actually building a sales motion for your organization?
Yeah. No matter where I've been, no matter what studio I've represented or in my consulting business, I took a little bit of a break and went out and consulted just to get a little more experience. The process is the same no matter what I'm doing, and pretty much no matter what business I'm talking to. And if you want to talk do's and don'ts, the very first thing is do be prepared. Don't advance on a sales or a business development process until you are prepared. And by what I mean by that is make sure you have a robust database before you start, even if you're just starting from scratch or if you've been in business for 20 years. Make sure that pipe or database is scrubbed, that it's relevant, that it's full of people that are warm leads or referrals, people that you've worked with in the past or you've been referred to. And you can sprinkle cold in there as long as those cold leads are relevant to your verticals, like to what you're doing for other clients. The best place to get work is where you've gotten it before or being referred in by someone or making sure that that business you're going after is full of a need for the verticals that you practice every day for your clients. So be prepared with a database. And people often ask me, well, what does that mean? Is that 10 people? Is it 15 people? No, it's 100 to 250 because you're going to tackle those every day. So you're going to churn through that pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you've got at least a good solid list of 100 to 250 people before you get started. In addition to that, you want to make sure you have content to back up what you're going to be saying about your studio or your agency or your business and your capabilities, because those people are going to start opening the emails, they're going to start responding to you. There's a 3-point touch base system that I use. The first time I reach out, the second time I reach out, and the third. And then I decide if I'm going to keep reaching out or if I'm going to put them on a newsletter or some type of a video outreach quarterly or biweekly, just depending on my gut. Um, but have your content ready too. Have your database, have your content, and make sure everything's clean so it's, not garbage in, garbage out. Be prepared before you get started with both your list and your content.
We're going to talk about this here in a second, but so sorry, Kelly, I'm going to already not follow the agenda. But
That's
uh,
okay.
so when it comes to follow-ups, and maybe this can be also a good discussion around, you mentioned cold leads and mixing them with referral leads. How how do those differ? And maybe even specific with follow-ups, how do you think about how follow-ups are different when it comes to a referral versus, reaching out to somebody that's never heard of Space Junk or, the business that you're representing?
Yeah. The difference that I see for those always is a referral or a warm lead is someone that you've kind of already qualified, or someone that you've worked with and had a great relationship with has referred you over. So they kind of know who you are. They've looked at your website. They know the one of the people that you did a project with, and they probably told them about their experience with Space Junk. So I don't go as much into our history as I do with the warm and referral leads. I go into it, but they pretty much already know Space Junk. On the cold ones, the most important thing is to make sure when I reach out to them that we are telling them about us. We're telling them about our history. In our history, we've been in business for 22 years. So longevity. I know that I'm talking to a vertical that I already have tons of content for because I made sure that that cold list was qualified at least with a vertical that we practice in. So on the cold ones, let them get to know you first. Let them get to know your studio, your business, your culture, your people, your pipeline. Like I said earlier, if you're talking to a cold outreach, let them hang up the phone. If the call goes great and you're showing them spot after spot or talking about projects that they have coming up, great. If not, at least let them hang up the phone thinking, wow, no matter what I do, like with this studio, or no matter what project comes up, I want to work with them.
That's great. I Clarence had a really interesting question, and when it comes to follow-ups, one comment that we get or question that we get asked is, how do I make sure that the follow-up is actually valuable? I think, I'm sure we all get these in our inboxes where it's, a
Yeah.
completely just wasteful use of words
Yeah.
just for, us to, respond one way or the other. Clarence asked, how do you maybe get dynamic samples in front of cold leads? So I guess this is, there's two sort of interesting questions or topics here. How are you as a, studio or, our agency clients or our B2B services, how are you leveraging the beauty of the work that you do and the success of the work that you do in your follow-ups? Do you have maybe specific tools or tips on how you deliver that, and what's sort of the cadence that you've seen be successful with that?
Yeah. The way that we do it is by having a lot of content. We have a database system that we use for our video library. So I can, at the tip of my fingers, get any video that we've done in the history of the company in an email very quickly. But backing up even further, Clarence, the thing that is the most important is for you or your studio or your business to do the research first for that cold outreach. Look at their website, look at how they're representing themselves, look at the work that they're doing or the needs that they have, look at their social. How are they talking about themselves, not only in a fun way, like on Facebook and Instagram? What are some of their challenges or recommendations that they're putting up on LinkedIn? Look at them on social even before you reach out, and look at them on YouTube or Vimeo. What content are they creating that you can speak to? And if you're researching someone cold and you look at all 5 of those things and only 2 of them match, then I don't know, is that a good cold outreach for you? And if you decide that just with your gut that it is, then make sure you're talking about your culture, your business, your people, and how you approach business when you reach out to them. But qualify that cold outreach yourself so that when you do reach out to them, you're talking in a way that's relevant to them, or you're showing them things that are relevant to them. That's what we do.
That's great. And one
There's a
follow-up.
lot of research that goes into every outreach that we do.
Yeah. And, I think the research is not only, and I think the where research can be wasteful or wasted is when you're not scrubbing your lists, or you're doing the research on leads or prospects that is not a good fit. And right. And I think
Yes.
that's an important piece of this, because research not only is useful for that introductory conversation or to book that first meeting, but it's also relevant as move them through your sales process. They're
Yes.
ideally we'd love, one call closes, but that doesn't happen in our world. And so the follow-ups, the additional conversations, all of those things become way more useful and valuable to the client, but also more possible because of the research done. So I'm curious, like, do you have any suggestions around call to actions? I guess we've seen, it's like, hey, do you want to have a meeting with me? Like, I feel like that's just such a overused call to action in an email. And I think Clarence's kind of point about how to leverage dynamic content, or your case studies and things, are you noticing anything with that, of like, providing social proof and that being almost a good enough call to action, or that is even better than taking 30 minutes off of a potential leads calendar? Are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, call to action, I don't know what business Clarence is in, but call to action for a studio like ours it's a little tough. A call to action that we like to use is what more can I tell you about our studio or this project? And sometimes I'm really vague about that because I do want to talk to them about budget and process and pipeline and why this one worked or what some of the challenges were. So our call to action on LinkedIn is, hey, if you have any questions about this or you want to reach out about how we accomplish this, comment in the comments section. Somebody's going to follow up with you. Call to action for us can also be I try to use this. It's been successful this year. It's kind of hard, but I try to let people know that if there is a project that they're thinking about, we want to talk about that early. We want to talk about it before they're setting a budget for it or a timeline for it. Let me do a mock bid for you. Let me talk to you about your brief that you've got already, or your partial storyboard, or whatever it is that you're working on. Let me give you a couple ranges, and let me show you a couple projects that we've done in those ranges. So the call to action for me is constantly qualifying with that client that you're going to be the right fit for them. Not only as a capability, but as a team, as a pipeline, as a manager of their project. Because I don't know, I'm going to say this and a lot of people are going to, shake their heads. Yes, we are constantly, especially post pandemic. Space Junk is a 22-year-old studio. We're 18 people. Our work speaks for itself. We have soft agency services, including script writing, storyboarding, those things. We are constantly being told that for a certain project, it's us and a freelancer. And so it's like, that's hard because we know going into it that the freelancer's budget is going to be way smaller than ours because we are a full 18-person studio. But we do win those projects because of our people, our process, and our pipeline. Or we lose a project or don't get an opportunity to do that project that time, but they come back to us. afterwards because of what they learned in the first round of information with us. So, a call to action for a studio like ours is how can I give you more information to make a qualified decision? You know?
100%.
Now, with a project that we've already done, I always ask for referrals. So if I do a project with someone and it goes really well, I'm always going to ask for a referral. And as part of, I back that up as well as a studio by offering them a referral program. So if I've done one project with them and there's another one that comes along, they're going to get a discount. If they refer me to someone and I do a project for that person, they're going to get a discount. So that's again part of qualifying why they should work with us because we care about them and why they should also refer us. They're going to get something as a result of that.
I like that. I think, if you don't mind me maybe summarizing,
Yeah.
is there's always value to be given. And I think in our environment where we just need deals to close, we see this on our end too, is like sometimes you just want to force them through your sales process and you kind of want to, it comes off as you just want to take and take. And I think as hard as it is and maybe as difficult as it may be, I think a huge element of a successful sales process is how are you and how are we giving value at every stage of that process. And that requires, to your point, preparation of research, of knowing who these clients are, what they need, what they're currently doing, and providing value all throughout where you sort of stay top of mind until the time is right. And I think some of the examples you posed of like a mock proposal walkthrough or giving your time away and your effort away to present more of kind of your studio and your B2B organization's value, I think is a really unique way of framing call to actions and how to move prospects from the top to ultimately closing in the sales process. So I think that's great.
Yep. 100%.
Awesome. One element of this that I think you've experienced a lot of, not because you're not good at what you do, but it's the nature of this, is sort of dealing with rejection. And I just summarize rejection as receiving an answer that can be used, right? I think a yes and a no are equally useful because it helps inform your strategy, your planning, it refines your approach. So I know it can be very discouraging, but how do you, as having done this for so long, how are you treating no's, or how are you viewing them as opportunities?
Yeah, I've never been one. I mean, when I started out in my first couple years, no's were hard, but I knew that I had a powerful and talented enough team to where down the road, and because we were new in this town and the industry, we were kind of one of the pioneers here in Columbus and Ohio to offer both live action and animation in the same studio. A lot of times they're separated, but no's aren't hard for me because I truly believe that there's something better coming along right behind that that is now leaving room to come in. And I can also learn a lot more about, if they allow me to, I can also learn a lot more about why we were told no. Never is it you, I mean, a lot of times they're like, well, it was just budget. You guys were too high. Okay, well, let's talk about that. We were too high because of what, Is the scope different with who you went with? Is the timeline different because of who you went with? I always ask for the reasons why we were told no. And I don't, I'm very careful not to ask someone for even more of their time after they have made a decision, but I do try to get that via email. So we have kind of our standard questions that we ask when we're told no. And if I don't get an answer right away, I will follow up in about 2 to 3 weeks. I don't hound them or anything like that. But the more information I can get about why they said no. And then if I feel really strongly that we want this brand as a client or this agency as a client, I'll keep my eye on them. When the project is done, I'll email them and say, hey, how did that go for you? Do you mind showing me the project? I'd love to see it. Or maybe I saw it on LinkedIn or on their social. Hey, I just saw the project that we talked about. It looks great. I hope you enjoyed your experience with that. Always offer to get back in touch with them. 9 times out of 10, I'm able to stay in touch with people that have given me no's by being really interested in how that process went for them. And then again, no, I cannot express enough. If you're going to create the database that we talked about earlier, the clean database, keep it clean. Like when you're told no, go in and note in there, either through Pipedrive or whatever you're using to keep track of your communication, even if it's just Google, go in and make a note that you lost that project in 2023, that you learned why, and that you're reaching back out to them again. So keep all that information relevant. Don't let it go for even 2 or 3 months. It'll take you forever to get caught up if you're consistently reaching out every day. So I just really try to turn no's into either education for us or the extension of a relationship that's just someone I haven't worked with yet.
Love it. This is I'm sure a common question. It's from an anonymous attendee, so I don't know if this is I don't know who this is. But how do you delicately ask if the client is using a competitor, especially one that you frequently are bidding against? Maybe
Oh,
just one step back. I'm curious, is that even important to you?
oh, yeah, and there's nothing delicate about it. Like if any of my people are listening right now, they're laughing because in a capabilities pitch or in a pitch when we're actually pitching a project, I've either asked already who we're bidding against, or and if they haven't told me or they won't tell me at the end of the pitch, I'll ask again, because then I have a chance to look them in the eye or talk to them and say, sometimes people are like, man, Kelly, I know you. I already told you. I'm not going to tell you who we're pitching against. But it's like, the only reason we're asking is being apples to apples. Again, going back to we're an 18-person studio, and I think we might be bidding against a freelancer or a 2 to 3 person studio. So I want to make sure that not only the capabilities that we're presenting and the ideas that we're presenting are apples to apples or at least close in range with who I'm bidding against. So it's important for them. It's important for their budget and everything that they're going to be working on with this other team, I will especially ask that question if it's really one of the first times that they've done video or animation. Because it's important. They don't know what they're about to be up against. And if I know that I'm bidding apples to apples, I know that at least the pipeline, the process that they're going to go through is going to be, it's not going to be as good as ours, but it's going to be pretty close. If they're going with a freelancer, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them because there's going to be a lot more management on their end, heavy lifting on their end, making decisions that they really don't know how to make. I'm talking to the businesses out there listening, you are the experts in your business. So don't be afraid to ask who you're competing against. It only makes sense. And if you can't get that answer, then you can't get it. I never would go around them. I never would ask around or anything like that. But if I can get that information, it's very important to know if we're apples to apples.
That's great. So I
Did
guess,
that answer your question? I hope that answered your question. Yeah.
yeah, I think two interesting takeaways there, and this is a learning for me, and is, you can ask it early in the process, right? It doesn't need to
Totally.
happen after the rejection. It can be,
Totally.
at the meaningful stages. And I love the way that you framed it of, I want to make sure that, you, the client, or you, the prospect, are getting exactly what you need. And would you say that sometimes it's actually an interesting opportunity to maybe remove yourself from the equation if truly it is not a fit, or maybe there is some misalignment in the scope of work or something? But I feel like presenting or asking about that could be a useful way of ensuring that you are the right fit, right? And I think that's a good way to often
Exactly.
frame that.
Exactly. Yeah, there are times in the history of our studio where we do turn projects down, or we do have a conversation with someone about, we were just talking about this the other day in a capabilities presentation. A lot of times we have some really strong partners on the strategy side. So, we're not an agency. We don't do discovery and strategy for a brand. That's usually all done by the time they come to work with us. And we don't pretend to do it either. So it's really important. There's been a lot of times when we've been in meetings and we're 15 minutes in and we're all looking at each other like they're not ready. They're not ready yet to do this video. They don't have brand standards. Their logo's not done. We know enough that when we're talking to someone, we know that they're not ready. So I will sometimes pull back and say, you know, look, this is a great project and I really want to work with you for this reason and whatever research I've done. But I think maybe we could take a step back and recommend someone to help you finish the strategy and the brand standards, and that we don't do that here, but we can definitely make a couple recommendations and help you make that decision so that when that's done, you're ready to tell this story visually. I've done that many times and I've been successful with it. Again, we care about our clients and we care about the way that they work with us and the education that we provide as the experts. That's going to go a long way for you rather than taking a project that they're not ready for and they spend that money and it doesn't really get them anything right now, when if they would have just done a little more, it would have been more successful.
Love it. I'm not good enough to delicately segue into some very different questions. So I'm just gonna say there's some
Do it.
different questions for you. um, um, but these are, I guess, more tactical, which is pretty neat. And I know we have a slide towards the end about kind of how to think about your sales stages. So maybe I'll like skip over there just for a second. This is not. We can talk about this maybe after we answer some questions. But how do you? And this was Dave at Zookeeper. How do you, well, or I guess, what do you think about, or how do you define clean? And Dave's specific question: what program do you use for your clean database of contacts? Do you integrate it with Zapier? I mean, I wonder, maybe even more broadly, what does it mean to clean your database? I don't know, Dave, if that helps, or if that question is also helpful to you, but that would be interesting.
Yeah. Hi, David. Yeah. So listen, I know that there are a lot of different options out there for databases, Salesforce, Hub, HubSpot. I'm going to be totally transparent. I use Google for Google Contacts and Google Mail. They talk to each other, and we use Pipedrive. Pipedrive is someplace where your database can go and you can make notes and move things along in different phases. It'll communicate with Google. We keep it pretty simple here at Space Junk, and we always have. But keeping it clean means that it's clean from the beginning, and that, well, man, this is another thing I haven't touched on yet, but and Dave knows how often people move around. Like they'll leave one studio and go to another studio. They'll leave one agency, go to another agency. A marketing director will go here and there. And the way that we keep our database and tag our database keeps track of all that. So in Google, I have multiple labels for each client. And I can pretty much bring up at any certain time any of my verticals, any of my agencies, any of my, production studios, because we work with a variety of clients. So keeping it clean means taking time every week or as you're working to keep everything up to date. And that's all going to integrate into, so Simeon, Google, and Pipedrive are pretty much the three things that we use. And they are going to integrate with each other pretty much at the touch of a button, with an export, with an import, you know, with an email, a newsletter. We've got templates that we use for emails, templates that we use for reels, pretty much the touch of a button. And it takes the entire team to keep all that up to date. So starting out clean, keeping it clean, and as you add to it, keeping it organized and clean the whole time.
Just to summarize, I think, and I guess clean could mean one thing for Space Junk, it could mean another for another business, because it sounds like a lot of the things that you're doing is developing context. So it helps with, we have the saying at RevBoss where it's, right person, right message, right time. Those things can often change, right? The person could change jobs, that business's needs might be different. The person or your main point of contact may change for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
So that context, as good as you can be, is difficult as you're managing hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people
Thousands.
at any given time. And so how you manage that context, to your point, whether it's technology and leveraging tags, whether it's automation or workflows, or, just good old manual, note taking, I think is sort of, at least from what I gleaned, kind of the element of keeping it clean, right?
Yes, and something that I tell Mel and anybody that I've worked with as a consultant, make sure that when you, like, because people do move around, but make sure that if I'm going back to a client, it's all about relationship development. None of my clients are numbers. Some of them have been with us for 15 years, longer than that. Some of them are 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, but I can go back into that person's name and I can recall 5 years ago what they were doing within their business and what they're doing now, because they might have gotten a promotion. There might be someone below them now that reports up, let's work with Space Junk or let's work with somebody else. That person is there to say, nope, I've worked with Space Junk, let's work with Space Junk. Keep track of all that information that's important for your relationship. I have dog and cat names, I have kids names, I have number of kids, I have, like the positions that they've held, where they've held them. And following people on LinkedIn, I used to hate doing it unless I had worked with them. I was really picky about whether or not I, punched into their world and said, hey, I'd like to follow you, but not anymore, because I want to know if they move around and I'm going to see that sooner. I don't read newspapers that much anymore. It's all online. So I want to know if they move around and go someplace else, and so that we can start that relationship there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always tell Mel and people like that, make sure in your database that you can look at a name and it helps you remember the history of the conversations you've had, because you can't remember all that like fresh. We're all asked to do so many things every day. It's hard to remember everything. So let it be right there in your database.
Totally. I know we're 15 minutes till the end. There's a couple
Wow.
more questions here that all kind of, I think, are similar. So I'm going to do my best to make this somewhat cohesive. You mentioned things like, in terms of research and prep, things like the LinkedIn, their website, maybe news or PR releases they shared on a, lead or person level, changing jobs and kind of keeping track of those things. Are there any other things that maybe their specific research databases? Dominic said, do you utilize some sort of research database to drill down to industries in which you have provided service, are there other things that you might recommend or that you've leveraged that you can speak to?
Certain things other than databases and LinkedIn and social and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of people, so just from my experience here and the people that I've worked with for so long here, I'm really big about, talking to my industry friends and, what did you do? What are you working on? What's new? Have you worked with a new studio? Have you heard of a new, I try to stay fresh with what's going on in the industry. And I've been doing this a long time, and I'm still in contact with people that I've been in contact with for 20 years. And a majority of my networking world they could be my children. I mean, they're so much younger, but I love keeping in touch with the young generation and what's important to them and how are they working and how are they not working these days. I mean, this younger generation in their 30s, early 30s, really established in their careers, getting established in their careers, they're working completely different than I did. And that's important for me to know when I approach them or when I talk to them. So there's really nothing drastically different other than staying connected. So, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's like, oh, yes, I'm definitely doing this now. I am approaching things differently since post-pandemic for my own sanity and being able to stay in touch with people and be in front of people. And like I said earlier, everything that's been successful for us at Space Junk, I'm trying to apply that to getting in front of people now, networking, how I look at a networking event now versus how I used to in the past. It's all different. It's all completely different. And we're having some success with that. So you just have to think differently than you used to about how you're going to appeal to people.
Somebody asked, and I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more into it because you alluded to it here a couple of times. Asked, do you think in-person networking events are overrated?
I think certain ones are for sure. Um, I look at the speakers, who's going to be leading. If it's just a general networking and everybody has a drink in their hand and it's people that I've seen 3 or 4 times this year already, I'm not as likely to go. I can ask a person to go out for a beverage and get caught up with them. And I do that a lot. I want to go to an event where they're going to be talking about things that are relevant for my networking, for Space Junk as a business, or where I can provide feedback that's important to them as a speaker. So I look at the speakers now. I like to go to new networking events. Here in Ohio, we have several, and we've been to a couple and we really like them. We're approaching people now that have new agencies, and we're approaching them and saying, let's do an event together. Or we went to one that we really liked in Cincinnati. Have you done one in Columbus? Well, not yet. Well, let us help you do one. Let's partner and do one. Let's get you on a panel that we want to do. I'm happy to be on a panel with you. I think a lot of the traditional networking things for our industry, advertising agencies, studios, production companies, I don't put as much value on those that aren't starting to change, aren't starting to see that they need to change content wise. So I look at content and I look at speakers.
That's great. Great advice. So there are a couple of questions here specifically related to RevBoss. If it's okay with the people that asked that and with Kelly. Kelly, actually, we initially got connected because she provided a case study. There's a a video of Kelly and I interacting that's up on our website. I can share it in the follow-up email, but she talks a bit about Space Junk and their strategy with leveraging a partner like RevBoss to support kind of their inbound referral pipeline, and talk alludes to a lot of that. So feel free to check that out if you'd like, and if you're interested, for those that ask that question. I do, mainly because I want to maybe not talk about kind of RevBoss specifically, but I do think there's an interesting question here. How do you think about, and how do you evaluate, a like where you're getting your leads from? You mentioned things are different now. You have to use your imagination. You mentioned you're kind of seeing some success with networking because you're thinking about them differently. How are you, how do you frame your thoughts about inbound leads, referral leads, outbound leads? Where else are you, going and getting leads from? And then maybe with this underlying context that, Space Junk is unique. You are a very specific type of business. You don't work with just anybody and everybody. So in lieu of sort of the characteristic of your business, how do you think about, where you're getting leads from, where you're setting up conversations from, things like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I prefer where I'm getting leads from. Well, when I left Space Junk for a little while and I came back. And when I came back, I was thrilled that they had signed up with a lead generation company. I didn't know who that was when I first came back, but in my first 2 weeks, I got to know RevBoss better. And I mean, it's a great relationship. Like you said, go listen to that recording of you and I kind of going back and forth on what we look for, what you guys do for us, and that type of thing. But the most important thing for us working with any type of an outreach company that's going to hopefully get us referrals, whether it's a rep or a piece of software or a lead generation, is that our culture, our tone, our brand language, our personality stays intact. I've had numerous people tell me, look, I know this is a sales email. I've been working with you for a while, but man, this sounds like you. This sounds just like you. And that's really important to me and to us, that that brand voice is going out consistent to who we are as a company. So it's important for me to get referrals or leads from people where I know it's going to be genuine and I know it's going to be relevant. I've not worked as successfully with reps in the past for that reason, because they represent so many different people that we lose that along the way. Because, 9/10 of a job is the relationship and the process. The talent is already there. You can see it when you look at a website, and our work speaks for itself. But I look for those places that are gonna care enough about Space Junk to communicate in the way that we would communicate. I mean, the volume's always going to be there. As long as you're looking at your verticals and you're choosing people to reach out to from a cold perspective, especially, as long as you're doing your research and reaching out within your verticals where you know you have content, that's half the battle. But you have to work that system every single day. You can't just let that go out there and think, oh, they're going to come to me. They're not. You have to work it every day, every week.
I think this will kill a couple birds with this one question, one stone. Do you have like a formula in your head, or in from a building a business case perspective of you know, leads that you generate via inbound and leads that you generate via inbound referral, leads that you generate kind of outbound or marketing activity at Space Junk, or even kind of within your team? Do you evaluate or keep tabs on on that at all to help inform where to make more investment or maybe where to hold off investment or anything like that?
Oh, that's a really good question. In addition to lead generation, I have a very strict policy of outreach that has proven for me over the years, and that is volume. I mean, the more volume you can put out there with your well-managed tools, like I said, our video, our email, our database, our follow-up, all the things that we do. Social, man, our social has really improved this year because a lot of people on the team made the investment. But it's just volume. We have a rule, I do, and Mel does, that every day there's 5 to 10 new people that we're reaching out to. And as you start that, if you're new at this process, by the end of the week, you've got 25 people, right? So the next week, you're going to do 3 to 5 every day, and that's going to snowball. But you're keeping track of it. You know what you sent, you know what stage you're at because of your database and your email. And then it's going to start to snowball and you're going to have your follow up. So without volume, there's not going to be that many sales. So it's just really important to have everything organized so that your follow-up is efficient and relevant. So yeah, I mean, it's what we're doing with our lead generation contract, and then it's what we're committed to here with our own process. I hope that helps. It's not magic, it's not rocket science. It's really just, if you are going to sign up for something or create an internal process and pipeline and you're not going to stick to it and you're not going to work it, it's not going to work.
The two questions have alluded to this, and I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it. So there's a couple questions like, do you guys leverage cold calling? Do you have a
Absolutely.
Yep,
Every week.
yep.
Yep. And that's one thing I can, I see the sheet in front of me under number one. I mean, build specific qualification requirements at each stage. And for cold, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. For cold, it's more about doing the research ahead of time, making sure you're reaching out to someone that potentially could be a good fit, a brand that could be a good fit. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. But with cold, focus on your capabilities, your people, your culture, and qualify at the end that you've done work in the category that they are in. For qualified leads, focus on being relevant, showing them things that will be relevant to them. And if you offer more than one service like we do in live action animation, show them both right away. Like if they're qualified, show them that you can do both, because we have plenty of clients who came to us to do live action and then turned right around and did animation, or vice versa. For proposal, again, focus on your qualifications, the relevance, your history, and ask as many questions as you can up front to make sure that you're showing them things that fit their budget, their timeline, and the story that they need to tell. Negotiation, it's the same thing. Try to find out the budget range that they're working with. If not, show them different categories and different things that you've done in those price ranges. For closed work, just make sure you're starting that relationship. That should be a client that in future years you're continuing to do work for, or you're getting a referral from.
This is great. And thank you for all of the questions. I know we're 2 minutes over. This is hopefully maybe a quick question, but Cody asked, is there a good time to clean and update leads? A golden hour, in quotations, or is it better to kind of update as you go? This might be a personal preference thing, but do you have a specific? Yeah.
I mean, every morning when I get up, I open my spreadsheet, my database, Simeon, and Pipeline. And those are always in the background of everything that I'm doing. And, I'll be honest, I don't update every day, but don't let it go more than a week. Every time I let it go more than a week, I regret it, you know? And the way that I deal with that though, it's going to happen, especially I used to be the only business development person for Space Junk. Now I have a partner, and then with that partner, we have our creative team works with us as well. When you do get behind, block out the time on your calendar, get your favorite cup of coffee, make it enjoyable, sit outside, it'll only take you, depending on how much time you let go, an hour, 2 hours to get that updated. But you got to go all the different places, right? You got to follow them. You got to go to LinkedIn. You got, keep yourself educated.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll plan timing a little bit better next time. I feel like I kind of threw
Well,
things at you as we
I
go.
tend to
So
talk, so
all's good. For those that kind of stuck around towards the end, even though we're past, we appreciate it. Kelly, thank you so much. Just by the
thank you.
questions and answers, I feel like this was valuable to them and the folks that hopped on, and I know it'll be valuable for those that couldn't make the actual live session. So thank you so much. We'll sign off now. You'll get a follow up with the recording, and have a great Monday, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.